Want to watch a classic Christmas film but don't know what to watch? Well, I've got 12 for you. Yes, and going straight into it, I am Harry Bailey from the Golden Hour Film Podcast, and I'm going to talk about It's a Wonderful Life first, because yes, it is my favourite classic Christmas film of all time, and we are covering it this week on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. It's got an iconic James Stewart or Jimmy Stewart performance. Frank Camper's direction is exceptional, and for me, it is the best classic Christmas film. Hence, I'm getting it out of the way first, because next I'm going to talk about one that maybe not all of you have seen, and it is considered by many people to be a classic Christmas film, even though the ending is kind of all that takes place at Christmas, and that is Meet Me in St. Louis. Yes, they call it Louis in this film because it rhymes with coochie in the song. Don't ask me. Yes, it's got Judy Garland in it, who you know from Wizard of Oz, but for me, the star of the show is Margaret O'Brien, who is Tootie, which is one of the funniest child performances I've literally ever seen. She is like literally a small future Christmas serial killer in the making. Her jokes are written way ahead of their time. It's like genuinely really funny. And yeah, it's in Technicolor. It looks very good. It's quite musical. The song on the tram has no reason to go as hard as it does. It is so catchy. And yeah, it's maybe not necessarily the best film on the list, but it's a real nice cozy, melodramatic film that you can just watch at Christmas. But yeah, it's technically a Christmas film because a portion of it covers all 4 seasons in 1 year in this house, and yeah, a lot of stuff happens at the Christmas portion. Although the Halloween portion for me is the best. Next, I'm going to talk about another film that we've covered and another film in Technicolor, and that is White Christmas. Yes, Bing Crosby's White Christmas, Irving Kershner's White Christmas. It is not necessarily my favorite classic Christmas film, but 1, it's very good. 2, I probably don't consider it a favorite because I didn't watch it when I was young, and it's such a sentimental genre that I'm sure if people here are much younger than me and they're watching this and they watch White Christmas for the first time, they may fall in love with the film. I think it's a good film, don't get me wrong, and the ending and the singing and everything that happens with General Waverly, particularly at the end, is so heartwarming. But yeah, it's not necessarily my favorite, but I definitely would recommend it. It is a good film, and a lot of people do love it. Next, I'm going to talk about something totally different, and I'm going to talk about Blast of Silence. Yes, it's like Martin Scorsese before Martin Scorsese. It is a gun-for-hire film set at Christmas. The guy wanders the streets quite lonely. It's set at Christmas time, and yeah, he is a hitman sent to do a job at Christmas time. It is a Christmas film noir. It's so dark. The ending is so bleak. And I can't help but love it because it's set at Christmas, so if you're kind of maybe on a bit of a burnout from all the sentimentality of Christmas movies and you want to watch something Christmas adjacent, well, this is set at Christmas, but it's certainly not a sentimental or heartwarming film at all. Next up, I'm going to talk about the one that won the Oscar for Santa Claus, or Kris Kringle, because he may not be Santa Claus, and of course that is Miracle on 34th Street, the Edmund Gwenn one. Again, one of the 3 films that we covered this Christmas. I'm not going to talk about it an awful lot, but yeah, Edmund Gwenn's performance as Kris Kringle is just so heartwarming. It's amazing, and it's an amazing feat for him to have won the Oscar because, as we said on the podcast, it's a real, like, snobby sort of highbrow thing now where I can't imagine someone will win an Oscar for playing Santa Claus, so it's just amazing that someone did. If he is Santa Claus, that is. Next up, I'm going to talk about Christmas in Connecticut. This is a fantastic little hidden gem that I had never heard of before researching for this video. It's got Barbara Stanwyck in it, who I am a huge fan of, and it's got Sidney Greenstreet in it, who I'm a big fan of. Obviously, we covered him in The Maltese Falcon. He's also in Casablanca. It's got such a convoluted plot about these people who con their fans into thinking that they're this real successful cookery author, and one of their fans is this war hero who goes through this traumatic event at the beginning of the film, and he really wants to meet the author, and they set up this whole press thing where they're going to take him in for Christmas because he's a war hero, and they have to come up with this whole scheme to try and convince him that they are this legit cookery author. It's bizarre. It's a bizarre plot, but it is genuinely very funny, and I'm a big fan of it. Christmas in Connecticut is probably a new classic Christmas favorite of mine. I really did enjoy it. Next, I'm going to talk about another Barbara Stanwyck film, because she is just class, and that is Remember the Night, and this film I loved. It is like legitimately now one of my favorite old school rom-coms I've ever seen. It is, again, Barbara Stanwyck, as I said. She plays this bit of a rogue character who is about to go to court for stealing, and the opposition lawyer is played by Fred McMurray, who uses some underhanded tactics to push the trial out over Christmas, which means that she has to spend Christmas in prison, in a cell, and he feels guilty about it, so he pays her bail until they go back to court after Christmas, but then he finds out that she has no family, so he takes her in, and basically the film covers that little pocket in between the two court dates. And yeah, it's really heartwarming. It's a lovely, lovely Christmas rom-com. Next up, I'm going to go back to my boy Jimmy Stewart and talk about The Shop Around the Corner, which is legitimately a fantastic film. Probably top 3 films that I'm going to mention on this list, if I'm honest. It is so good. Jimmy Stewart is fantastic. It is set in a shop around the corner in Budapest, and it feels very grounded. It's very real world, and it kind of covers the various lives of those people who work in this shop. But yeah, Jimmy Stewart is the lead. I don't want to talk about it too much because, yeah, I didn't really know much about it going into it, and I feel like that's maybe the best thing. But just know, again, it's got an iconic Jimmy Stewart performance. He's so great because he plays the Boy Scout so well, but he can add levels to his performance where he feels more relatable. He's not like Superman, if you get me. He's not just doing all good all the time. He adds levels to his performances, and yeah, he is so good in this film. The Shop Around the Corner is genuinely one of the best films that I have mentioned on this list, and I would highly recommend it. And yeah, it also takes place at Christmas time. Next up, I'm going to talk about Bright Eyes, which is the first Shirley Temple film I ever watched, and yeah, she is class. She's an amazing child actor. The film, again, is Christmas adjacent because a large portion of it is set at Christmas. And again, this one's got quite a few twists in it, so I'm not going to spoil too much. But basically, this young girl, her father has already passed away, and her godfather and her mother kind of raise her in between this airport and this large mansion where the mother is a cleaner. She kind of bounces between the two places. A series of events happen around Christmas time and basically change the young girl's life forever, and it just basically follows this young girl and how everybody just seems to be so enamored by her, and it's fantastic. Well, not everybody is enamored by her, actually. We've got an evil little child in this who does a fantastic job. But yeah, I don't know if this is like how this would rank amongst other Shirley Temple films, because as I said, it's the only one I've seen, but I really liked it. It's very cozy, but it gets quite dark. It's not afraid to get dark at all. But again, set at Christmas, so yeah, watch it this Christmas if you haven't seen it. Scrooge, or it's also referred to as A Christmas Carol, but I believe it was mainly marketed as Scrooge, is a fantastic adaptation of the Charles Dickens novel. I would highly recommend it if you haven't seen it, mainly because Alistair Sim as Ebenezer Scrooge may be the best Ebenezer Scrooge I have ever seen. It is so great. He's got a real weird sense of humor, you can tell in his performance, and it actually really elevates the character. It's A Christmas Carol, so you probably all know the story, but if you want to maybe watch an adaptation of it that you haven't seen before, I would highly recommend Scrooge from the 50s. It is genuinely very good. Some of the effects are really good as well. It kind of weirdly, it reminded me of Dante's Inferno with some of the stuff that happened with the effects. It was kind of straight. I was not expecting the effects to be as like adventurous as they were, but they were. Particularly when the ghost of Jacob Marley shows up. Those effects are fantastic. Yeah, I was really into this, and as I said, if you haven't seen this particular adaptation of A Christmas Carol, I'd recommend it this Christmas, because for me, it's got the best Scrooge maybe ever. Next, I'm going to talk about The Apartment, because yeah, if you consider it Meet Me in St. Louis to be a Christmas film, then surely The Apartment is too, because they only partially take place at Christmas. And The Apartment is legit like one of the best films of the entire 60s. So if you're going to watch it, I would recommend watching it on like Christmas Day or the day after Christmas Day, because it really takes place kind of in between Christmas and New Year's. It's in that little sweet spot. And again, almost spoiled something there for this week's podcast. I'm going to keep that to myself. But yeah, the film is amazing. It's a Billy Wilder classic, and it's written impeccably. Jack Lemmon is phenomenal. Again, Fred MacMurray's in this as well. He is phenomenal. And of course, Shirley MacLaine's performance is a lot. This is a heavy movie. It's hilarious at points. It's incredibly written. Billy Wilder, maybe his best written film. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Double Indemnity is so well written. Anyway, if It's a Wonderful Life isn't the best film I've talked about on this list, it's The Apartment. And then, Shop Around the Corner can just sneak on into third there. And last but certainly not least, because again, this of all the new ones that I've watched, maybe my new Christmas classic, and that is Holiday Affair, because yeah, Robert Mitchum is so entertaining in this movie. It is what it says in the tin. It's about a holiday affair, sort of. And yeah, Robert Mitchum is the rogue kind of guy who comes into her life after her husband dies, and she's with a fella, but she doesn't marry him, and she doesn't know what to do, and she has a kid. And yeah, Robert Mitchum, who works in a toy shop and goes down to the park and feeds orphaned squirrels and is best friends with seals and stuff, is so good. It is one of my favorite Robert Mitchum performances I've seen maybe ever. He is so charismatic and so witty, and the ending of this film is like pretty much perfect, I think. They couldn't have wrapped up each character's arc better, in my opinion. I like how they portrayed all of the characters in the end. They didn't necessarily feel the need to like make anyone out to be like a big villain or anything. They just tidied up everybody's arcs in like a really genuinely great way. And yeah, that scene on the train at the end is just exactly what you want to see. So great. And yeah, that is 12 classic Christmas films. If you haven't seen them, give them a watch. And recommend a few for me as well, because chances are if I haven't mentioned one on this list, it is probably because I haven't seen it. Except for The Bishop's Wife, which I just didn't really like. Shoot me. But anyway, recommend a few for me, and yeah, Merry Christmas, and I'll see you this week for this week's episode, It's a Wonderful Life, on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Thank you.